The sun hung low and merciless over Redemption Creek, painting the dust-choked streets in shades of rust and amber. It was the kind of heat that made men mean and women weary, the kind that baked the earth until it cracked like old leather. The town itself seemed to crouch beneath the weight of that August afternoon, its weathered buildings leaning against each other like drunks after a long night. Eloise Monroe stood at the window of the one-room schoolhouse, watching the last of her students scatter into the glare. The Hendricks boys kicked up clouds of red dirt as they raced toward the general store, their threadbare shirts flapping like wings. Little Mary Sullivan clutched her slate to her chest, walking slow and careful in boots 2 sizes too big, hand-me-downs from brothers who'd outgrown them years past. 2 years. That's how long she'd been teaching in this forgotten corner of the territory. Long enough for the children to love her and the adults to whisper. She was too young, they said, too pretty, too quiet about where she'd come from. A woman like that, living alone in the teacherage behind the school, well, it wasn't natural, wasn't proper. Eloise turned from the window and began tidying the rough-hewn desks, her movements practiced and precise. Each slate wiped clean, each bench pushed straight. Order from chaos. It was all she could control in a world that had taken everything else from her. The late afternoon ritual was interrupted by footsteps on the porch, heavy, uneven. She knew that gait, had learned to distinguish it from all others. Jake Coulter from the Lucky Strike Saloon, drunk again before sundown. Her hand stilled on the last slate as the door creaked open. "Well now, Miss Monroe." His words slurred together like molasses. "Ain't you a sight for tired eyes?" She didn't turn around. "School hours are over. Mr. Coulter, if you need to speak about your nephew's lessons, please return tomorrow when you're composed." His laugh was ugly, wet. "Ain't here about no lessons." The floorboards groaned as he moved closer. Eloise's fingers tightened on the slate, her knuckles white beneath her cotton gloves. She could smell him now, whiskey and sweat and something sour underneath. "You need to leave." Her voice stayed steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "Leave." His hand fell heavy on her shoulder, spinning her around. "That ain't no way to talk to a man who's just being friendly." The slate clattered to the floor. Eloise tried to step back but hit the desk behind her. Coulter's face loomed close, his bloodshot eyes roaming where they shouldn't. "Mr. Coulter!" The schoolhouse door slammed open with such force it bounced off the wall. Silas Boone filled the doorway, all 6 feet and 3 inches of him, his massive frame blocking out the dying light. The blacksmith's leather apron still hung from his shoulders, and his hands, those scarred, powerful hands, flexed at his sides. "The lady asked you to leave." His voice was quiet, but it carried the kind of weight that made smart men listen. Coulter's grip on Eloise's shoulder loosened. "This ain't your concern. Boone, I'm making it my concern." Silas stepped inside, and the room seemed to shrink. "You got 2 choices. Walk out that door on your own feet, or I carry you out. Don't much matter to me which." For a moment, the only sound was Eloise's rapid breathing. Then Coulter released her, stumbling backward. "This ain't over," he muttered, but he was already retreating. "Man can't even have a friendly word without out." Silas didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. Coulter fled, his boots scraping against the steps in his haste. Silas watched him go, then slowly turned to Eloise. The anger in his gray eyes softened to something else, something that made her chest tight in an entirely different way. "You hurt?" She shook her head, not trusting her voice. Her hands trembled as she smoothed her skirts, trying to reclaim some measure of composure. "Thank you," she finally managed. He nodded, already turning to leave. That was Silas, always watching, always helping, never staying longer than necessary. But this time, she found herself speaking before he could go. "How did you know?" He paused at the door. "Saw him heading this way. Figured he wasn't coming for arithmetic lessons." Despite everything, a small smile tugged at her lips. "No, I don't imagine he was." They stood there, the space between them filled with unspoken things. 2 years of careful distance, of polite nods on the street, of him fixing her broken stove last winter and refusing payment. 2 years of her watching him work at his forge from her bedroom window, the sparks rising like fireflies in the dusk. "You shouldn't walk alone after dark," he said finally, "not with men like Coulter around. I manage. I know you do." His eyes held hers for a heartbeat longer. "Doesn't mean you should have to." After he left, Eloise sank onto one of the benches, her legs suddenly unsteady. The schoolhouse felt different now, smaller somehow, as if his presence had permanently altered the space. She knew what the town would say if they learned he'd been here, alone with her. More whispers, more speculation. But for once, she found she didn't care. The next morning dawned clear and cooler, a blessed reprieve from the previous day's heat. Eloise walked to the creek that wound lazy and brown through the cottonwoods at the edge of town. It was her sanctuary, the one place where the weight of watchful eyes couldn't follow. She'd brought her book, Emerson, worn and water-stained, but found herself unable to focus on the words. Her thoughts kept returning to gray eyes and scarred hands, to the way Silas had looked at her like she was something worth protecting. "Figured I'd find you here." She startled, nearly dropping the book. Silas stood a respectful distance away, a cloth-wrapped bundle in his hands. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said quickly. "Just thought, well, you missed supper last night. After what happened." He held out the bundle, even wrapped. She could smell the char of grilled fish, the smoke of his cook fire. Such a simple gesture, but her throat tightened with unexpected emotion. "You didn't have to. I wanted to." He set the bundle on a flat rock between them, then settled himself on a fallen log. Not too close. Always careful of her reputation, even here. "Creek's running low this year. Might dry up completely come October." She unwrapped the fish, trout, perfectly cooked, and they ate in companionable silence. The cottonwoods rustled overhead, their leaves already beginning to turn. This was what she'd missed most in the years since everything fell apart. The simple comfort of sharing a meal with someone who expected nothing from her. "Why do you come here?" he asked eventually. "To read, to think." She paused, considering. "To remember who I am when no one's watching." He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. She'd heard the stories. Cavalry soldier turned blacksmith. The scar across his chest from an Apache arrow. The wife who died of fever before he came to Redemption Creek. Everyone in this town dragged ghosts behind them like shadows. "I had a place like this once," he said. "Back in Missouri. Little bend in the river where the willows grew thick. Used to go there when—" He stopped, shook his head. "Well, we all need somewhere to breathe." The sun climbed higher, painting patterns through the leaves. Eloise found herself studying his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his dark hair curled slightly at his collar. He was handsome in a rough-hewn way, like something carved from the same stone as the mountains. "Can I ask you something?" The words surprised her as much as him. "Why did you really come yesterday? You couldn't have just happened to see Coulter heading my way. The forge is clear across town." A muscle worked in his jaw. "I keep an eye out. Make sure you get home safe most evenings. Yesterday, when you didn't leave at your usual time." He shrugged, but she caught the tension in his shoulders. Had a feeling. She should have been unsettled by this admission. Instead, warmth bloomed in her chest. "How long have you been doing that?" "A while. Silas, I know what you're going to say." He turned to face her fully. "That you can take care of yourself, that you don't need anyone's protection. And you're right, but that doesn't stop me from wanting to offer it." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Eloise felt suddenly exposed, as if he could see through all her careful defenses to the broken thing underneath. "I'm not—" She swallowed hard. "I'm not what people think I am." "I know. No, you don't. I've done things. Been accused of things. If you knew—" "I don't need to know." His voice was firm but gentle. "Whatever happened before you came here, whatever you're running from, that's your business. All I need is for you to stay." The tears came without warning, hot and sudden, She turned away, embarrassed, but his hand found hers. Just a brief squeeze, his calloused palm warm against her gloves. Before he pulled back. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't usually. Nothing to apologize for." They sat in silence while she composed herself. When she finally looked at him again, he was smiling, a rare, genuine smile that transformed his weathered face. "What?" she asked. "Just thinking this is the longest conversation we've had in 2 years." "Despite everything?" She laughed. It felt rusty, unused, but real. "I suppose it is. We should remedy that. Maybe have an actual conversation once in a while. Like normal people. Normal people." She tasted the words, found them bittersweet. "I'm not sure I remember how to be that." "Neither do I." He stood, brushing dust from his pants. "But maybe we could figure it out together." The offer hung in the air like a promise. Eloise wanted to reach for it, to say yes, to let someone share the weight she'd been carrying alone for so long. But the past was a chain around her ankle, and she couldn't ask him to bear that burden. "I should go," she said instead. "The children will be arriving soon." He nodded, understanding more than she'd said. "Sunday afternoons. I usually fish about a mile upstream. Good spot, quiet, if you ever wanted to bring your book." It wasn't quite an invitation, more like a door left open, should she choose to walk through it. "I'll think about it," she said. As she walked back toward town, Eloise touched her hand where his had been, feeling the phantom warmth through her glove, behind her. She heard the splash of water as he waded into the creek, giving her the privacy of leaving first. That evening, in the solitude of her small room behind the schoolhouse, she stood before the cracked mirror and unpinned her hair. It fell in dark waves past her shoulders, her one vanity in a life stripped of luxuries. She studied her reflection, trying to see what others saw. The pretty young teacher with secrets, the woman who lived alone and spoke to few. "Do I deserve to love again?" she asked her reflection. The woman in the mirror had no answer, but somewhere in the distance, she heard the rhythmic ring of hammer on anvil as Silas worked late at his forge. The sound was oddly comforting, a steady heartbeat in the cooling night. Perhaps Sunday afternoon, she thought. Perhaps she would take her book and walk upstream. Perhaps she would stop running, just for a little while, and let herself remember what it felt like to not be alone. Outside her window, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new whispers, new fears. But tonight, she held on to the memory of a shared meal by the creek, of gray eyes that looked at her like she was worth saving, of a simple offer made without conditions. It wasn't much, but for someone who had lost everything, it felt like the beginning of something. Something that might, if she was very careful and very lucky, grow into hope. The dust cloud appeared on the horizon just past noon, a brown smudge against the merciless blue sky. Eloise noticed it first through the schoolhouse window as she helped young Timothy Walker with his letters. Something cold settled in her stomach, a premonition maybe, or just the instinct of prey sensing a predator. "Miss Monroe?" Timothy's voice pulled her back. "Did I do it wrong?" She forced a smile, ruffling his sandy hair. "No, dear, your R is perfect. Why don't you practice 3 more while I check on the others?" But her eyes kept returning to that dust cloud, watching it grow larger, more distinct. A lone rider, moving with the unhurried confidence of someone who knew exactly where they were going. By the time the bell rang for dismissal, the rider had reached the edge of town. Eloise stood in the doorway, one hand shading her eyes. As her students scattered toward home, the man sat tall in his saddle, his duster gray with trail dirt, his hat pulled low. But it was the glint of metal on his chest that made her blood run cold. A badge, a marshal's star from Texas. The world tilted. She gripped the doorframe, her knuckles white, as memory crashed over her like a flash flood. Another badge, another man, another life that had ended in blood and betrayal. Her lungs forgot how to work. "Miss Monroe?" It was Sarah Morrison, one of her older students, lingering on the steps. Are you all right? You look awful pale. I'm fine. The lie came automatically. Run along home now. The rider had stopped at the water trough outside Murphy's General Store. Even from this distance, even after 6 years, she knew that set of shoulders, that casual arrogance in how he dismounted. The dead man wearing a dead man's badge turned, and their eyes met across the dusty street. Tate Granger, the man she'd once promised to marry, the man who'd orchestrated a bank robbery, pinned it on her, and vanished into the desert, leaving her to face the noose. The chalk fell from her nerveless fingers, shattering on the floor. Several students looked back at the sound, confused by their teacher's stillness. Inside, she managed, her voice barely a whisper. Everyone back inside. But they were already gone, and she was alone with the ghost of her past walking toward her with measured steps. She retreated into the schoolhouse, slamming the door, her hands shaking so badly she could barely work the latch. Think, she had to think. But all she could see was that night 6 years ago. The bank in flames, the manager dead in the street, Tate's hands covered in blood as he kissed her goodbye and promised to send for her. The trial that followed, the way no one believed her innocence because she'd been his woman, his accomplice, they said, even though she'd been miles away tending to her dying father. A knock at the door. Polite, almost gentle. Eloise. His voice hadn't changed, still smooth as whiskey, still capable of making promises that sounded like prayers. I know you're in there. We need to talk. She pressed her back against the door, eyes squeezed shut. Maybe if she didn't answer, he'd leave. Maybe this was just a nightmare. I'm not going anywhere, he continued, as if reading her thoughts. We have unfinished business, you and I. Footsteps on the porch, heavy ones, different ones. Something I can help you with. Marshall? Silas's voice, steady and sure. Eloise's eyes flew open. Through the window, she could see them facing each other, Silas still in his leather apron, hammer hanging from his belt, Tate in his stolen authority, one hand resting casual on his gun. Just looking to speak with the schoolmarm, Tate said. Official business. School's closed. I can see that, but the lady and I are old acquaintances. I'm sure she'll make time for the law. Maybe so. Silas shifted his weight, subtle but meaningful. But seems to me if it's official business, Sheriff Morrison ought to know about it. Why don't we walk over to his office together? Tate's laugh was cold. I don't think that's necessary. This is a delicate matter, personal. Personal and official don't usually mix. They do when it concerns a woman wanted for murder in Texas. The words hung in the air like a curse. Eloise saw Silas stiffen, saw his hands curl into fists, but his voice stayed level. That's a serious accusation. Yes, it is. Tate touched his badge. One I intend to investigate thoroughly. Now, if you'll excuse me. No, just that. One word. But Silas might as well have drawn a line in the dust. Tate's entire demeanor shifted, the false politeness dropping away. Careful, blacksmith. Interfering with a lawman's duties is a hanging offense. So's impersonating one. Silas nodded toward the badge. That star's got another man's name on it. Want to explain that? For the first time, Tate looked uncertain. His hand dropped from his gun. You don't know what you're talking about. Maybe not, but I know Sheriff Morrison will want to verify your credentials before you go making accusations against respected members of our community. They stared at each other, the tension thick enough to cut. Finally. Tate stepped back, his smile returning but not reaching his eyes. Of course, wouldn't want to cause undue distress. He tipped his hat toward the schoolhouse. I'll be staying at the hotel. I'm sure Miss Monroe will find time to speak with me once she's composed herself. He sauntered away, taking his time, making it clear he was choosing to leave. Silas waited until he'd turned the corner before approaching the schoolhouse door. He's gone. His voice was soft. You can open up now. She fumbled with the latch, finally managing to work it free. When the door swung open, she nearly collapsed into his arms. He caught her, held her steady, his presence solid as a mountain. That man, she whispered. He's not here right now. He guided her to one of the benches, kneeling in front of her. Just breathe, and tell me what you need. I can't. The children. If people find out. Nothing to find out yet. Right now. You're just a teacher who got spooked by a stranger. Happens all the time out here. His calm was contagious. Slowly, her breathing evened out. When she could speak without shaking, she met his eyes. I need to tell you something. About who I really am, what I've done. You don't? Yes, I do. She gripped his hands, needing the anchor. That man, Tate Granger. I was engaged to him once. Back in Texas, he robbed a bank, killed 2 men, and when it went bad, he blamed it all on me, said I was his accomplice, that I'd helped plan it. Then he disappeared. Silas's face was unreadable. And you were tried? Arrested, held for months. But the witnesses who could prove I wasn't there, one died of fever, the other left town. Everyone believed I was guilty. The judge was going to hang me, but my father was dying. They let me see him one last time, and I ran, changed my name, kept running until I found this place. And now he's found you. He's supposed to be dead. The words came out broken. The real Marshal Crenshaw. That's whose badge he's wearing. Crenshaw died in the robbery. Tate must have taken it, used it to become someone else, just like I did, not like you did. His thumb stroked over her knuckles. Gentle. You were innocent. That didn't matter then. It won't matter now. It matters to me. The simple declaration undid her. She pulled her hands free, standing abruptly. You don't understand. He'll destroy everything. My life here, my work, the children who depend on me. So we stop him. We? She laughed, but it was brittle. There is no we. Silas, this is my burden. He rose slowly, his gray eyes steady on hers. Been watching you for 2 years. Eloise Monroe. Seen you tend sick children through scarlet fever. Seen you teach reading to grown men too proud to admit they never learned. Seen you give your lunch to students who had none. You think I'm going to let some bastard with a stolen badge take that away? You don't even know me. I know enough. He moved closer, not touching but near enough she could feel his warmth. I know you wake up screaming sometimes. Walls are thin, and I work late. I know you look over your shoulder every time a stranger rides into town. I know you're scared all the time, but you never let it stop you from helping folks. Silas, I know I've been waiting 2 years for you to trust someone. Was hoping it might be me. His voice roughened. Guess I've got my answer now. Before she could respond, he was at the door. Lock up behind me. I'll walk you home when you're ready. You'll get yourself killed, she said quietly. He's dangerous. More than you know. He paused, looking back. So am I, when it comes to protecting what matters. That night, Eloise paced her small room like a caged animal. Through the thin walls, she could hear the normal sounds of evening, horses being stabled, men calling good nights, a baby crying somewhere. How could everything sound so ordinary when her world was falling apart? A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. She knew that knock, had been both dreading and hoping for it. It's me, Silas said quietly. She opened the door to find him holding a tray, coffee, bread, some cold meat. Figured you hadn't eaten. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. He set the tray on her small table. Need your strength for whatever comes next. She wanted to argue, but found herself sitting, picking at the bread while he leaned against the wall, giving her space, but not leaving. Tell me about that night, he said finally. The robbery. Why? Because if we're going to beat him, I need to know what really happened. There was that word again. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like a lifeline. So she told him. About her father's illness. How Tate had promised to help pay for medicine. About the night of the robbery. How she'd been 20 miles away at her father's bedside. How Tate had visited her the next morning. Blood on his collar. Swearing it was an accident. That things had gone wrong, but he'd fix it. He kissed me goodbye, she whispered. Said he'd send for me once it was safe. Then the sheriff arrived an hour later. They found the bank's money hidden in my barn. Tate must have put it there. Had witnesses saying they'd seen me with him the night before, planning something. All lies. But who'd believe the sweetheart of a killer? Your father? Died during the trial. I think that's what broke me. Not the accusation, but losing him while chained in a cell, not able to say goodbye properly. Silas moved then, pulling her against his chest. She should have resisted, should have maintained the walls that had kept her safe. Instead, she collapsed into him, letting years of fear and loneliness pour out in silent sobs. He held her through it, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring nonsense words of comfort. When she finally pulled back, embarrassed, he handed her his handkerchief without comment. "What happened to the real Eloise Monroe?" he asked. "Died of consumption 3 years ago. I was nursing her. That's how I learned about teaching. She had no family, no one to mourn her except me. When she passed, I took her name, her teaching certificate, became someone who could disappear into a small town and live quietly. Until now. She twisted the handkerchief in her hands. I should run again, tonight, before he causes trouble. No, it's not your choice. He caught her hands, stilling them. You run now. You'll be running forever, and he'll follow. Men like that, they don't let go of what they think belongs to them. So what do I do? You let me help. You trust me. His eyes searched hers. Can you do that? She thought about it, really thought about it. Trust was a luxury she hadn't allowed herself in 6 years. But looking at this man, scarred and steady, and offering her something she'd thought lost forever, she found herself nodding. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I think I can. He smiled then. That rare, transformative smile. Good. Because I've got some ideas. But first, you need to sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. At the door, he turned back. Eloise, that kiss you mentioned. When he said goodbye, did you kiss him back? The question surprised her. No, I think some part of me already knew what he was. I turned my face away. Good, he said softly. That's good. After he left, Eloise lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. Outside, she could hear Tate's voice from the saloon, spinning tales, gathering information, laying his trap. But for the first time in 6 years, she wasn't facing danger alone. She pressed her fingers to her lips, imagining a different kiss, from a different man, one who saw her truth and stood beside her anyway. It was a dangerous thought, a foolish thought. But tonight, with the world closing in and tomorrow uncertain, she let herself hold it close, a small flame against the darkness. The whispers started with the sunrise. By the time Eloise reached the schoolhouse, she could feel the weight of watching eyes, hear the hushed conversations that died when she passed. Tate had been busy in the saloon last night, planting seeds of doubt with the skill of a man who'd cultivated many poisonous gardens. Morning, Miss Monroe. Mrs. Henderson's greeting was cooler than usual, her smile not reaching her eyes. Heard we have a lawman in town asking questions. Good morning, Mrs. Henderson? Eloise kept her voice steady, her spine straight. I hope little Agnes is feeling better? The woman's face softened slightly. Her daughter had been sick with croup last week, and Eloise had sat with them through the worst of it. She is, thank you, but Miss Monroe, if there's something we should know, there's nothing. The lie came smooth as silk. Just a case of mistaken identity, I'm sure. But Mrs. Henderson's doubt lingered in the air like smoke. Inside the schoolhouse, Eloise found Silas already there, installing a new lock on the door. He worked with quiet efficiency, his presence both comforting and troubling. What would people think, finding him here so early? You shouldn't be here, she said softly. Neither should you. He tested the lock, satisfied with its action. But here we are. People will talk. Let 'em. He turned to face her, and she saw he'd barely slept. Got bigger concerns right now. Through the window, they watched Tate emerge from the hotel, stretching in the morning sun like a cat. He'd cleaned up, shaved, his stolen badge polished to a shine. He looked every inch the respectable lawman. "He's going to make his move today," Silas said. "How do you know?" "Because I would strike while the iron's hot, while folks are curious but not yet suspicious." He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "Telegraph came in this morning. My Army friend in Austin did some checking. Marshal Jeremiah Crenshaw died 6 years ago in a bank robbery. Body was never recovered." Eloise's stomach turned. Tate must have taken his papers along with the badge. "That's what I figure. But here's the interesting part. 3 months ago, a Marshal Crenshaw arrested a man in Amarillo. 2 months ago, he collected a bounty in Fort Worth. Last month, he testified in a trial in Dallas. He's been using a dead man's name all this time." She sank onto a bench, building a reputation. "And now he's here for you." Silas sat beside her, careful to leave space between them. "Question is, why, after 6 years? Why now?" Before she could answer, the door opened. 3 of her students entered, the Garrett twins and little Mary Sullivan. They paused, clearly surprised to find Silas there. "Morning, children," Eloise managed. "Mr. Boone was just fixing our lock." "Morning, Miss Monroe, Mr. Boone." Mary clutched her slate, eyes wide. "My PA says there's a marshal asking about you. Says you might be a bad woman." The words hit like a slap. Eloise felt Silas tense beside her, but she forced herself to smile. "Sometimes people make mistakes, Mary. Sometimes they think they know something when they don't. That's why it's important to look for truth, not just listen to stories. Like when folks said old Mr. Chen was a horse thief, but really his horse just wandered off." Exactly like that. More children arrived, their usual chatter subdued. Parents lingered at the door, watching, whispering. By the time class started, only half her students were present. Silas left through the back door, but not before catching her eye. "I'll be close," he said quietly. The morning crawled by. Eloise tried to maintain normalcy. Arithmetic, reading, geography, but her heart wasn't in it. The children sensed it, fidgeting more than usual, stealing glances at the door as if expecting the marshal to burst in at any moment. He came at lunch. Tate entered without knocking, his presence filling the room like smoke. The children fell silent, some shrinking in their seats. He'd timed it perfectly. Maximum audience, maximum impact. Miss Monroe. He touched his hat brim. All false courtesy. Or, should I say, Miss Campbell? Eloise set down her chalk with deliberate calm. "Children, early dismissal today. Gather your things quietly." "No need for that," Tate said smoothly. "I'm sure these young ones would benefit from a lesson in justice. How folks can't run from their past forever. Leave the children out of this. Like you left those bank guards out of it." His voice carried just enough to ensure the lingering parents heard. "Oh, I'm sorry. You probably don't tell that story during history lessons." "Out!" Silas's voice came from the doorway. Parents scattered as he entered, and even Tate took a step back. "Children, Miss Monroe said early dismissal. Best mind your teacher." The students fled, Mary Sullivan casting one worried look back. Within moments, the schoolhouse emptied except for the 3 of them. "This is official business," Tate began. "No, it's not." Silas moved between him and Eloise. "Official business goes through Sheriff Morrison. This is something else. You seem mighty protective of a woman you barely know." Tate's smile was sharp. "Or maybe you know her better than folks think. Those walks by the creek. Those late-night visits." Silas's fist connected with Tate's jaw before Eloise could blink. The marshal stumbled back, hand going to his gun, but Silas was already on him, slamming him against the wall. "Draw that iron and I'll feed it to you." Silas growled. Tate spat blood, his veneer of control cracking. "Assault on a peace officer. You just bought yourself a noose. Blacksmith. Worth it?" But Silas released him, stepping back. "Get out. Don't come near her again without the sheriff present." Tate straightened his coat, wiped his mouth. His eyes found Eloise over Silas's shoulder. "This isn't over. You know what you owe me." "I owe you nothing." 6 years. Ellie, 6 years I've been building this identity, establishing myself, all so I could come back for you proper, make you respectable again. You left me to hang. I left to protect you. The mask slipped entirely now, showing the desperate man underneath. Everything I did was for us. The money, the new life. The murders? He flinched. That wasn't supposed to happen, but we can start fresh. Come with me, and all this goes away. Stay, and I'll see you swing for what you made me do. Get out, Silas said again, quieter but more dangerous. Tate backed toward the door, his false smile returning. 3 days. Ellie, you've got 3 days to decide. After that, I telegraph Austin about the murderess teaching innocent children. When he was gone, Eloise collapsed onto a bench, shaking. Silas knelt in front of her, his hands gentle on her arms. He's insane, she whispered. He actually believes I wanted this, that I was part of it. Men like him rewrite history to suit themselves. His thumb stroked her sleeve. You okay? No. She looked up at him. You shouldn't have hit him. He'll use it against you. Let him try. He smiled grimly. Felt good, though. Been wanting to do that all morning. Despite everything, she found herself almost smiling back. My hero. Don't. His face went serious. I'm no hero. Eloise, just a man who's tired of watching good people get hurt. They were close now. Close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his gray eyes. Count the lines that pain and sun had carved around them. Her hand moved without her permission, touching the scar that disappeared beneath his collar. Apache? She asked softly. Comanche. Different lifetime. He caught her hand, held it against his chest. We all have our ghosts. Yes. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong. We do. A cough from the doorway broke them apart. Reverend Thomas stood there, his aged face kind but concerned. Miss Monroe, Mr. Boone, I heard there was some trouble. Nothing we can't handle. Reverend, Silas said, but the old man shook his head. I think perhaps it's time for truth between old friends. He entered, closing the door behind him. Eloise, I've known you 2 years now. Seen your good works, your kind heart. If you're in trouble, let us help. Reverend, I also knew a young woman in San Antonio years back. Bright girl, taught Sunday school. Her name was Margaret Campbell. She spoke often of her sister Eloise, the one who read too much and dreamed too big. His eyes were gentle. Funny thing, she said her sister died in a fire. Yet here you are. Eloise felt the last of her defenses crumble. Reverend, No need to explain. We all come to God's country seeking redemption. Some from the law, some from ourselves. He pulled an envelope from his coat. But I saved something, just in case. Letters. From the real Eloise Campbell to her sister, including one dated the night of that bank robbery, posted from her father's sickbed 20 miles away. Hope bloomed in Eloise's chest. So sudden it hurt. You have proof I wasn't there? Had it for months. Been waiting for you to trust someone enough to ask. He handed her the envelope. God works in mysterious ways. Child, sometimes he saves the evidence we need for the moment we need it most. Tears ran down her face as she clutched the letters. Silas's arm came around her shoulders, solid and warm. This changes things, he said to the Reverend. With this, we can fight back. Indeed, but carefully. A cornered snake is most dangerous. The Reverend stood. I'll speak to Sheriff Morrison. Show him what we have. In the meantime, perhaps you both should take some time to pray on what comes next. He left them there in the empty schoolhouse, afternoon sun slanting through windows. Eloise read the letters, her own words, her sister's replies, all dated and postmarked with cruel precision around the robbery. It's really there, she breathed. Proof. Told you we'd figure something out. Silas's voice was rough, though I'll admit, didn't expect it from that quarter. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. Why are you doing this? Really? He was quiet for a long moment, his hand coming up to cup her face. "Because the first time I saw you, something in me recognized something in you. Two broken people trying to build something whole. Because every time you smile at those kids, it feels like sunrise. Because I've been dead inside for years, and you make me want to live again. Silas, I know it's too soon. I know you've got bigger worries. But Eloise, I need you to know, when this is over, when you're free, I want to court you proper, take you to church socials, walk with you in daylight instead of hiding by the creek, give you everything you deserve." She kissed him then. Couldn't help it. Not the desperate passion of people about to die, but something softer, deeper, a promise, a beginning. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she whispered, "When this is over, when this is over." He agreed. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the first drops of rain spattered against the windows. They should move, should plan, should prepare for whatever Tate would do next. But for just a moment, they stayed there, holding each other while the storm built outside, finding shelter in something neither had dared hope for. Tomorrow would bring new battles. Tate wouldn't give up easily, and even with proof, the fight for her freedom would be hard. But she wasn't alone anymore. She had Silas, steady as stone. She had the Reverend with his unexpected grace. She had truth on her side. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The storm that had threatened the previous afternoon arrived in full force by evening, turning Redemption Creek streets into rivers of mud. Thunder rattled windows as Tate Granger stood on the porch of Silas Boone's modest house, rain dripping from his hat brim. "Open up, blacksmith. We need to talk." Inside, Silas set down his coffee cup deliberately. He'd been expecting this visit, had seen Tate watching his house from the hotel window. The bruise on the marshal's jaw had darkened to purple, a small satisfaction. Silas opened the door but blocked the entrance with his body. "State your business. May I come in? It's wet out here." "No." Tate's smile was thin. "Unfriendly sort, aren't you? Fine, let's discuss terms right here then." "What terms?" "The terms where you stop interfering with my business, and I don't ruin what little life you've built here." Tate leaned against the porch post, casual despite the rain. "See, I've been asking around about you. Former cavalry, dishonorably discharged. Wife died under questionable circumstances." Silas's jaw tightened. "Careful. Fever, they said, but a man who drinks, who has nightmares about Apache raids, who knows how to kill with his bare hands. Well, fever's a convenient explanation for a lot of things. You're talking about things you don't understand. I understand plenty. I understand you've got your eye on my woman. I understand you think you're her protector now. But what happens when folks learn the truth about you? When they find out why you really left the army?" Silas stepped onto the porch, forcing Tate back. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave town. Tonight, you're going to forget about Eloise and whatever sick claim you think you have on her. Or I'll kill you. Simple. Matter of fact. Won't be the first man I've put in the ground. Difference is, you'll deserve it." Tate's hand drifted to his gun. "Threatening a peace officer. You're no peace officer. You're a murderer wearing a dead man's badge." Silas smiled coldly. "Yeah, we know about Crenshaw. Telegraph lines work both ways." For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Tate's eyes. But he recovered quickly. That snake charm reasserting itself. "Doesn't matter what you think you know. I've got papers, witnesses, 3 years of solid reputation. You've got the word of a woman who's been living under a false name." He stepped back into the rain. "Ask yourself this. Soldier, when the dust settles, who's the law going to believe?" After he left, Silas stood in the doorway, letting the cool rain wash over his heated face. The old rage was stirring, the one he'd spent years learning to control. Sarah had helped him fight it, gentle Sarah with her quiet ways and steadying presence. But Sarah was gone, and the demons she'd held at bay were rattling their cages. A figure appeared through the rain. "Eloise, wrapped in an oilcloth, picking her way through the mud. "You shouldn't be out in this," he called. "Neither should you." She reached the porch, water streaming from her hood. "I saw him come here. What did he want?" "To rattle me, threaten me." He helped her out of the wet oilcloth. "Come inside before you catch your death." His house was spare but clean. A soldier's habits die hard. She'd never been inside before, and he watched her take in the details. The Bible on the mantel, the single photograph of a woman with kind eyes, the rifle mounted above the door. "Sarah?" she asked, nodding toward the photograph. Yes, she was beautiful. She was. He stoked the fire, adding wood. "Coffee? Please." They sat by the fire, the storm raging outside, the silence between them comfortable despite everything. "Finally," Eloise spoke. "He won't leave willingly." "No." "So what do we do?" Silas stared into the flames. "I told him I'd kill him if he didn't leave. Meant it, too. You can't. I've killed before. Eloise, in the war. After. Some because I was ordered to. Some because they needed killing." He looked at her. "I'm not proud of it. But I'm not sorry either. And if he tries to hurt you..." She reached for his hand. "That's not who you are anymore. Isn't it?" His laugh was bitter. "He knows things. About my discharge. About Sarah. Things that could turn this town against me as quick as they're turning against you." "What things?" He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Then, I disobeyed orders. Refused to attack a Comanche camp because it was mostly women and children. My commander said I was soft, that my wife had made me weak. I hit him, broke his jaw, his nose. They'd have court-martialed me, but Sarah was already sick. They gave me a medical discharge instead. Let me take her home to die. You did the right thing." "Did I? Those Comanche I saved, they raided a settlement 2 months later, killed a family. Maybe if I'd followed orders..." "Stop." She squeezed his hand. "You can't think like that. You chose mercy. That's never wrong. Tate won't show mercy. He'll use everything against us. Then we'll face it together." He pulled her close, and they sat watching the fire while the storm spent itself outside. Somewhere in the distance, lightning illuminated the desert, throwing twisted shadows of Joshua trees and rocks. The next morning brought clear skies and trouble. Sheriff Morrison stood on the schoolhouse steps, his weathered face grim. A small crowd had gathered, including several parents who'd pulled their children from class. "Miss Monroe," the sheriff began, clearly uncomfortable. "I've received some serious allegations." "I'm aware." Eloise kept her voice steady, though her heart raced. "The Reverend Thomas was supposed to speak with you. He showed me some letters. But Marshal Granger has witnesses saying they saw you in San Antonio the night of the robbery. People willing to swear to it." "Paid witnesses," Silas said from behind her. He'd appeared like a guardian angel, still wearing his leather apron. "How much did he offer them, Sheriff?" Morrison's face reddened. "Now see here, Boone." "No, you see." Silas moved to stand beside Eloise. "A man rides into town with a dead lawman's badge, makes accusations against a woman who's done nothing but good here, and you're ready to believe him. I've got to investigate. It's the law. Then investigate him too. Ask why a dead marshal is collecting bounties. Ask why he's so eager to get Miss Monroe alone." The crowd murmured, uncertainty rippling through them. "Mrs." Henderson stepped forward. "Sheriff, my Agnes was dying of croup last week. Miss Monroe sat with her all night, singing hymns and cooling her fever. Does that sound like a murderess to you?" "My boy couldn't read until she came," another parent added. "Now he's writing letters to his grandmother back east. She prays with the sick," someone else called out. "Brings food to the elderly." But others shook their heads, fear winning over gratitude. "If she's wanted for murder, she's not wanted for anything." Reverend Thomas's voice cut through the crowd. He walked slowly, age showing in his gait, but authority in his bearing. "I've sent telegraphs to Austin, San Antonio, even Fort Worth. No warrants exist for Eloise Campbell or Monroe. The only record is of charges dropped 6 years ago for lack of evidence." "That's a lie." Tate pushed through the crowd, his face flushed with anger. "I have documents. Forged, no doubt." The Reverend held up a telegram. "Interesting thing. The Texas Rangers have been looking for someone impersonating Marshal Crenshaw. Seems several bounties were collected illegally. They're very interested in meeting you." The crowd's mood shifted, suspicion turning toward Tate. He backed away, hand hovering near his gun. "This isn't over," he snarled. "You think you've won? You think some country preacher and a broken-down soldier can protect her?" "Yes," Silas said simply. "We do." Tate's eyes found Eloise. "You remember what you cost me, Ellie, what you owe me. This isn't finished." He stormed off, leaving the crowd buzzing. Sheriff Morrison looked between Eloise and the Reverend, clearly wrestling with duty and doubt. "I'll need to verify all this," he said finally. "Until then, Miss Monroe, perhaps it's best if she continues teaching our children." "Mrs." Henderson interrupted. "My Agnes needs her education. Sheriff, we all do." One by one. Parents nodded, not all of them. Some still looked uncertain. But enough to matter. That evening, Eloise found herself in the church, helping prepare for Sunday services. It was quiet work, polishing pews and arranging hymnals, but it soothed her rattled nerves. The Reverend worked beside her, humming softly. "Thank you," she said eventually, "for believing in me, for keeping those letters." "God puts us where we're needed," he replied. "I've learned to trust his timing. I lied about who I was. You survived. There's a difference." He paused in his polishing. "We all wear masks. Child, some for protection, some for pride. What matters is the heart underneath." The church door opened, and Silas entered, hat in hand. "Reverend, Eloise, sorry to interrupt." "Not at all," Reverend Thomas said. "I was just about to check on the vestry. Carry on." When they were alone, Silas approached slowly. "Wanted to make sure you were all right. I'm managing." She set down her polishing cloth. "Though I keep waiting for the next attack. He's desperate now. Desperate men make mistakes. Or they do desperate things." She looked up at him. "I'm scared, Silas, not just for me, but for you. For anyone who helps me." He took her hands, calloused thumbs stroking her palms. "Remember what I said about courting you proper when this is over?" "Yes." "Well, I've been thinking, why wait?" He pulled her closer. "Let him see that you're not alone. Let the whole town see. Make it clear that anyone who comes for you comes through me." "Silas, marry me?" The words hung in the church's quiet air. Eloise stared at him, sure she'd misheard. "What? Marry me," he repeated, steadier now. "Not someday. Now. This week. Stand with me in front of God and everyone, and let me protect you the way a husband should. You can't. We barely. This is insane." "Is it?" His eyes held hers, gray as storm clouds but warm as summer rain. "I've watched you for 2 years, loved you for at least 1. Maybe the timing's wrong. Maybe we should wait. But Eloise, I don't want to wake up one more day knowing you're facing this alone." "I'm not what you think I am," she whispered. "I'm broken, damaged. I have nightmares and trust no one, and I drink too much some nights. I wake up screaming Sarah's name. I've got blood on my hands that won't wash clean." He cupped her face gently. "We're both broken. Maybe that's why we fit." Tears ran down her cheeks. "People will say you're marrying a murderess. People will say I'm marrying the bravest woman in the territory." He smiled softly. "The answer's yes. By the way, I haven't said yes. Your eyes have." She laughed through her tears, the sound echoing in the empty church. Outside, evening painted the sky purple and gold, and somewhere a mockingbird sang its complicated song. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes. I'll marry you." He kissed her then, there in the church with God and the mockingbird as witnesses. It was a kiss full of promises, protection and passion, safety and desire, all the things she'd thought lost forever. When they broke apart, the Reverend was standing in the doorway, smiling. "About time," he said mildly. "Shall we discuss dates?" But even as they made plans, as joy bloomed in her chest like desert flowers after rain, Eloise couldn't shake the feeling that Tate wouldn't let this stand. He'd come too far, invested too much in his delusions. The storm had passed, but another was building on the horizon, and this time, it would take everything they had to weather it. The night of the sandstorm came 3 days before the wedding. It rolled across the desert like God's own fury, turning the air thick and brown, sending folks scurrying for shelter. Eloise had been in the jail's single cell for 2 days now. Sheriff Morrison's compromise after finding evidence in her room. Evidence that Tate had clearly planted. Stolen money from a recent stage robbery. A wanted poster with her supposed likeness. Protective custody. Morrison had called it. But bars were bars. She pressed against the small window, watching the storm swallow the town. Sand hissed against the walls like 1,000 serpents. Somewhere out there, Silas was coming for her. She knew it as surely as she knew her own name. Both names. The one she'd been born with and the one she'd chosen. The door to the sheriff's office burst open, sand swirling in. But it wasn't Silas. It was Tate, his badge glinting in the lamplight. A bandana pulled over his nose and mouth. "Sheriff's securing his homestead," he said, voice muffled. "Storm caught him on the road. It's just you and me now. Ellie," her blood turned to ice. "The deputy sent him to help get folks to safety. Told him I'd watch the prisoner." He pulled down the bandana, revealing that snake's smile. "See how easy it is when you have a badge? People just trust you." He moved to the cell door, producing a key. "Here's what happens next. You're going to write a confession, murder, theft, the whole story. Then you're going to hang yourself with your own petticoat, overcome by guilt. Tragic. Really. But it ties everything up neat. No one will believe that. Won't matter what they believe. You'll be dead." He unlocked the door. "Or you come with me now. Leave all this behind. I've got horses waiting. Supplies. We can be in Mexico before the storm clears. I'd rather die. That can be arranged." He stepped into the cell, and she backed away until she hit the wall. His hands were reaching for her throat when the office door exploded inward again. Silas stood there like an avenging angel, sand swirling around him, blood running from a gash on his forehead. He'd fought through the storm, probably blind half the time, following instinct and desperation. "Get away from her!" Tate spun, drawing his gun, but Silas was already moving. They crashed together, wrestling for the weapon. The gun went off, the sound deafening in the small space, splinters raining from the ceiling beam. Eloise grabbed the water pitcher from the corner, bringing it down hard on Tate's head. He staggered, giving Silas the opening he needed. His fist connected with Tate's jaw, snapping his head back. Another blow to the stomach doubled him over. But Tate was a survivor, slippery as oil. He pulled a knife from his boot, slashing wildly. The blade caught Silas across the ribs, drawing a grunt of pain and a spreading line of red. "Silas! Stay back!" He grappled with Tate, both men straining for control of the knife. They crashed into the desk, into the wall, leaving bloody handprints on the whitewash. Finally, Silas got both hands on Tate's wrist, slamming it against the iron bars until the knife clattered free. Tate tried to knee him in his wounded side, but Silas took the pain, used it, channeled it into one final surge of strength. The throw was pure cavalry training, using Tate's own momentum to send him flying. He hit the cell's back wall hard, sliding down, stunned. Before he could recover, Silas had him by the collar, dragging him out and slamming the door shut. "How's it feel?" Silas panted, locking the cell. "Being on the other side?" Tate struggled to focus, blood running from his nose. "This isn't... You can't..." "Watch me." Silas tossed the keys on the desk, out of reach, then turned to Eloise. "You hurt?" She shook her head, unable to speak. He was swaying on his feet, one hand pressed to his bleeding side, but his eyes were clear and fierce with purpose. "Need to bind that," she managed. Later, storm won't last forever. When Morrison gets back, he'll find his prisoner escaped and the marshal who was watching her locked up instead. Eloise finished. They'll hunt us. Let them try. He pulled her close with his good arm. Got horses hidden at the old Hutchinson place. Supplies too. Been planning this since he locked you up. Silas, you're hurt. I'm alive. You're alive. Rest is details. They stumbled out into the storm together. The sand had turned the world into a brown nightmare. Visibility down to mere feet, but Silas knew the way. Had walked this town in darkness for years. They pressed forward, Eloise supporting him when he faltered, him shielding her from the worst of the wind. The Hutchinson place was a burned-out homestead on the edge of town, abandoned since the Apache raids. The horses were where Silas had left them, heads down against the storm, but steady. He'd chosen well, desert breeds that could handle anything. Inside what was left of the barn, they collapsed against the wall. Eloise tore strips from her petticoat, binding his wound by feel in the dim light. Should have killed him. Silas muttered. No, you're not a murderer. Would have been justice. Would have been revenge. She tied off the bandage. There's a difference. He caught her hand. Marry me. What? Right now. Here. His grin was wild, a little delirious from pain and adrenaline. We're already on the run. Might as well be on the run together. You're insane. There's no preacher, no witnesses. God's witnessing. This storm's biblical enough. He pulled her close. Eloise Campbell, will you take me as your husband? For better or worse, in sandstorms and sunshine, till death do us part. Despite everything, the danger, the pain, the impossibility of it all, she found herself smiling. Yes, I will. Then I take you as my wife, my love, my partner, my reason for living. He kissed her, tasting of sand and blood and desperate hope. We'll do it proper when this is over. Church wedding, white dress, the whole show. But right now, in God's eyes, you're mine and I'm yours. They held each other as the storm raged, sharing warmth and strength. Eloise dozed fitfully, jerking awake each time the wind howled louder. Silas stayed alert despite his wound, watching the door, ready for trouble. Near dawn, the storm began to die. The sudden quiet was almost more unsettling than the noise had been. Silas struggled to his feet, checking the horses. We need to move. They'll be looking soon. Where? North. There's canyons up there. Water if you know where to look. We can hide until what? She stood, brushing sand from her ruined dress. We can't run forever. Don't need forever. Just need time to think, to plan. He winced as he saddled the first horse. That reverend said the Rangers were looking for someone impersonating Crenshaw. Maybe we can. Voices in the distance, dogs barking. The search had begun. They mounted quickly, Eloise hiking up her skirts. Modesty be damned. Silas led them out the back way, through the remains of the corral, into the open desert just as the sun broke the horizon. Behind them, shouts grew louder. Someone had found their trail, but Silas knew this land, had scouted it during his cavalry days. He led them through a maze of arroyos and washes, using every trick he'd learned fighting Apache. By midday, they'd lost the immediate pursuit. Though dust clouds in the distance showed the search continuing, they rested in the shade of a massive boulder, sharing water sparingly. I'm sorry, Eloise said quietly, for bringing this to your door. Stop that. He cupped her face. Best thing that ever happened to me was you bringing trouble to my door. You're shot because of me. I'm alive because of you. Before you came, I was just existing, going through motions, waiting to die. He kissed her forehead. You gave me something to fight for again. They pressed on, the sun brutal overhead. The wound in Silas's side had started bleeding again, soaking through the makeshift bandage. He swayed in the saddle, but kept pushing forward. By late afternoon, they reached the canyons, a labyrinth of red rock and shadow. Silas led them deep inside to a hidden spring he'd discovered years ago. Clear water bubbled from the rock, feeding a small pool surrounded by cottonwoods. "We'll be safe here for a bit," he said, half falling from his horse. Eloise caught him, easing him down beside the pool. His face was gray beneath the sunburn, his breathing shallow. The wound was worse than he'd let on. "Need to clean this properly," she said, trying to keep the fear from her voice. "Just need rest." But his eyes were going unfocused. "Eloise, I'm here. If something happens, nothing's going to happen." She tore more strips from her petticoat, soaked them in the cold spring water. "You're too stubborn to die on me now. Promise me? If I don't make it, you'll keep running. Get to California. Start over. Stop talking like that. Promise. I promise nothing except that we're both getting out of this." She cleaned the wound as best she could, packed it with moss like she'd seen done for battlefield injuries. "You're my husband now, remember? In God's eyes. And I don't give up on family." He smiled weakly. "Stubborn woman. You married me. Best decision I ever made." As the sun set, painting the canyon walls blood red, Eloise held him close and prayed harder than she'd ever prayed in her life. Not for herself, but for this man who'd chosen her, scars and all, who'd stood between her and danger without hesitation, who'd given her hope when she'd forgotten what it looked like. In the distance, a coyote howled. The search would resume tomorrow. Tate would convince them somehow, twist the truth until she was the villain again. But tonight, in this hidden sanctuary, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the man in her arms, the ring of stone around them, and the stars beginning to emerge overhead. She'd been running for 6 years, but here, now, she'd found something worth standing still for, something worth fighting for. "Stay with me," she whispered against his hair. "Stay with me, my love." His hand found hers, weak but warm. "Always," he murmured. "Always." 3 days in the canyon. 3 days of fever dreams and cold sweats, of Eloise bathing Silas's burning forehead and forcing water between his cracked lips. The wound had gone bad, as wounds do in the desert heat, and she'd used every trick she knew, boiling cloth for bandages, making poultices from desert plants, even cauterizing the worst of it with a heated knife while he thrashed and screamed. On the 4th morning, his fever broke. He opened clear eyes to find her curled against him, her face gaunt with exhaustion and worry. "You look terrible," he croaked. She laughed through her tears, the sound echoing off the canyon walls. "You're one to talk. How long?" 3 days. You've been—" She swallowed hard. "I thought I'd lost you." "Take more than a knife to kill this old soldier." He tried to sit up, winced, thought better of it. "The posse?" "They passed by yesterday, heading south. I think they've given up on this area." She helped him drink from their dwindling water supply. "But we can't stay here. Food's almost gone. There's a place, the Talbot Spread, abandoned silver mine about 10 miles north. The widow who worked it might still be there, Rose Talbot. She helped me once when—" He paused. "When Sarah died. Good woman, keeps to herself." "Can you ride?" "Can try." It took them most of the day to cover those 10 miles. Silas slumped forward in his saddle, Eloise leading his horse and watching anxiously for any sign of pursuit. The landscape changed from red rock to gray shale, scarred by the picks and shovels of fortune seekers. The Talbot place squatted against a hillside like a wounded animal, part cabin, part mine entrance, all weathered wood and determination. Smoke rose from the chimney, a welcome sight. The door opened before they could knock. A woman stood there, 60 if she was a day, with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She held a shotgun with the easy familiarity of someone who'd used it before. "Silas Boone," she said, not lowering the gun. "Heard you took up with a murderess. Hello, Rose." He managed a weak smile. "Heard you stop believing everything you hear." Her sharp eyes studied Eloise, took in the torn dress, the exhaustion, the protective way she hovered near Silas. Then she looked at him, the blood-stained shirt, the fever-bright eyes, the way he held himself like a man held together by will alone. Get inside, she said finally. Both of you, before someone sees. The cabin was sparse but clean. Herbs hanging from the rafters. Mining tools mounted on the walls like decorations. Rose helped them to a cot near the fire, her hands gentle despite her gruff manner. Let's see what damage you've done to yourself this time, she muttered, cutting away the makeshift bandages. While she worked, Eloise found herself studying their savior. Rose Talbot had the look of someone who'd been beautiful once, before the desert and loss carved lines into her face. Her hands were steady as she cleaned and dressed Silas's wound, murmuring observations. Not as bad as it looks. Girl did good work keeping it clean. Bit of fever, bit of rest. You'll be pestering folks again in no time. Rose, this is Eloise, Silas said. My wife. The older woman's eyebrows rose. Wife, is it? When did this happen? Few days ago? During the storm? No preacher. I'm guessing. God was witness enough, Eloise said quietly. Rose snorted. Sounds about right for you. Silas, never could do things the easy way? She turned to Eloise. You really kill those men in Texas? No, didn't think so. You've got healers' hands, not killers. She moved to her stove, stirring something that smelled like heaven. Hungry? They ate rabbit stew in silence, the first real meal in days. Eloise found tears running down her face from the simple pleasure of hot food and safety. Rose pretended not to notice, but pushed more bread their way. So, the older woman said finally, what's your plan? Can't hide here forever. We need to find Doris Hutchins, Silas said. She worked at the Gilded Lady Saloon in San Antonio 6 years ago. Word is she's up in the mining camps now. The witness, Eloise added. She heard Tate confess to the robbery when he was drunk. It's the only way to clear my name. Rose was quiet for a moment. Hutchins, skinny woman, scar on her left cheek? You know her? Knew her. She passed through here maybe 3 months back, working the camps. Like you said, last I heard, she was at Fortitude Creek, about 30 miles northwest. Hope bloomed in Eloise's chest. She's that close? If she's still there. Mining camps are like tumbleweeds. Here one day, gone the next. Rose stood, moving to an old trunk. But you're not going anywhere tonight. Silas needs rest, and you need... She pulled out a dress. Simple but clean. Something that doesn't look like you've been wrestling coyotes. I can't. You can, and you will. No arguments. Later, dressed in clean clothes, with Silas sleeping peacefully by the fire, Eloise sat with Rose on the porch, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. He's a good man, Rose said suddenly. Saved my life once. What happened? My husband died in a cave-in 5 years back. I went a little crazy, started working the mine myself. No safety measures, no sense. Just wanted to join him. She lit a pipe, the smoke curling up into the night. Silas found me half buried under fallen rock, dug me out with his bare hands, stayed until I was healed. Never asked for anything. That's when his own wife was sick, but he still made time. He doesn't talk about her much. Sarah. Probably hurts too much. They were good together. Quiet love, you know? The kind that doesn't need words. Rose studied her. You love him? Yes. Good. He deserves it. Deserves someone who'll fight for him the way he fights for everyone else. They sat in comfortable silence until a sound made them both tense. Horses, approaching fast. Rose grabbed her shotgun, but Silas's voice came from inside. It's all right. That's Ben Morrison's gray. I'd know that gate anywhere. Sure enough, Sheriff Morrison appeared out of the darkness, alone and looking tired. He dismounted slowly, hands visible. Mrs. Talbot. Figured I might find them here. Don't know what you're talking about, Rose said, gun still ready. It's all right, Rose. Silas appeared in the doorway, leaning heavily on the frame. Ben's good people. The sheriff approached the porch, his weathered face troubled. Silas. Miss Monroe, Mrs. Boone, I guess now. Heard you got married. News travels, Silas said dryly. Everything travels in a town that small. Morrison removed his hat, running a hand through thinning hair. That's why I'm here. Alone, before my deputy, or that damn marshal figure out where you went. Come to arrest us? Eloise asked. Come to tell you Granger's lost his mind completely. He's wired every lawman in 3 states, claiming you're both dangerous fugitives. Put a bounty on your heads, $500 each, dead or alive. With what authority? Silas demanded. That's the thing. I wired Austin myself, checking his story. Turns out the real Texas Rangers are very interested in talking to him. That badge? They confirmed Crenshaw's been dead 6 years. They've been tracking someone using his name to collect bounties on folks who weren't wanted for anything. So arrest him, Eloise said. Morrison grimaced. Can't. He disappeared 2 hours ago. But not before convincing half the town you're both killers. Even showed some forged documents. Real professional work. He looked at Eloise. I'm sorry. I should have listened to my gut instead of his badge. What do you want from us? Silas asked. Want you to stay hidden until I can sort this mess out. The Rangers are sending men, but it'll take a week at least. Until then. He reached into his coat, pulled out a cloth bundle. Thought you might need these. Inside were ammunition, medical supplies, and a letter. Eloise recognized the Reverend's handwriting. He wanted you to have that, Morrison said, and to know he's working on getting those witnesses from Texas up here. Church folks have deep pockets when they want to. Why are you helping us? Eloise asked. Morrison settled his hat back on his head. Because I've been sheriff for 15 years, and I've learned to read people. You're no killer, ma'am. And Silas here. Well, he's got his demons, but he's always pointed them at folks who deserved it. He mounted his horse. Besides, my wife would skin me alive if I let anything happen to her favorite teacher. My youngest finally learned his numbers thanks to you. After he left, they sat in stunned silence. Rose was the first to speak. Well, seems you've got more friends than enemies. For now, Silas said. But Tate's still out there, with a bounty posted. Every gun hand and desperate fool in the territory will be looking for us. Then we find Doris Hutchins first, Eloise said firmly. Get her testimony, clear our names. You mean I find her, Silas corrected. You stay here where it's safe. Like hell. Eloise, no. She faced him, chin raised. I've been running for 6 years, letting fear control me. You showed me another way, standing and fighting. I won't hide while you risk everything. You two can argue about it tomorrow, Rose interrupted. Tonight, you rest. Both of you. Going to need your strength for what's coming. That night, lying beside Silas on a pallet near the fire, Eloise whispered, Are you angry about me insisting on coming? Terrified, he admitted. But not angry, never angry, just, he pulled her closer. I can't lose you, not now. You won't. We're stronger together. Remember? Together. He agreed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Outside, coyotes howled in the distance, and the desert wind whispered secrets to the stars. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, the search for Doris, the threat of bounty hunters, Tate's inevitable return. But tonight, in this simple cabin with its herb-scented air and protective owner, they were safe. More than safe. They were home, even if just for a moment. And sometimes, Eloise thought as sleep finally claimed her, a moment is all you need to remember what you're fighting for. The canyon at Devil's Throat was a gash in the earth. Red rock walls rising 200 feet on either side. At the bottom, a dry riverbed wound between boulders the size of houses. It was the kind of place where sounds echoed strange and bullets could come from anywhere, which was exactly why Tate had chosen it. Eloise felt the trap before she saw it. Something in the air, the way the birds had gone quiet, the absence of the lizards that usually sunned on the rocks. She reined in her horse, hand going to Silas's arm. Wait! The shot cracked across the canyon, sparking off the rock inches from her head. Their horses reared, and then Tate's voice echoed from somewhere above. That was a warning. Ellie, next one won't miss. Silas had his rifle out, scanning the canyon walls, but there were too many places to hide. Another shot, this one kicking up dust at their horses' feet. Let the girl go, Tate called. She's the one I came for. They'd found Doris Hutchins at Fortitude Creek, just as Rose had said. The saloon woman had been suspicious at first, but when she heard Tate's name, her face had gone hard. "That snake's still breathing." "Yeah, I'll testify. Heard him bragging about that bank job. Clear as day. Even showed off the marshal's badge he took. She'd written it all down. Signed and witnessed by the camp's makeshift judge. They had their proof. All they needed was to get it back to Redemption Creek alive. But Tate had been waiting. Behind the big boulder. Silas said quietly, "When I start shooting, you run. I'm not leaving you. This is my kind of fight. I'll keep him busy. Circle around. You get to cover." Another shot. Closer this time. Eloise saw the glint of sun on metal high on the eastern wall. Tate had the high ground and plenty of ammunition. "Together," she said firmly. "We do this together or not at all." Silas's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "On 3. Make for that overhang on the left." But before he could count, a new sound echoed through the canyon. Horses. Many horses. Approaching fast. "Company's coming. Marshal!" A new voice, young and eager. "Just like you said. Bounty hunters. Tate had brought backup." "Damn!" Silas breathed. He looked at Eloise, and she saw him making calculations. All of them bad. "Listen, there's another way out. About a quarter mile up. Narrow path. Barely wide enough for a horse. I'll hold them here." "No. Eloise." "I said no." She drew the pistol he taught her to use, checking the chambers. "We're married, remember? For better or worse. This is the worst part. Despite everything," he almost smiled. "Stubborn woman. You love that about me." "I do." The horses were closer now. Tate had stopped shooting, probably repositioning. They had minutes, maybe less. The overhang. Silas decided. "We make our stand there. Back to the wall. Clear sight lines. Make them come to us." They spurred their horses, racing across the open ground as bullets began to fly. Eloise felt one tug at her sleeve, another whistle past her ear. Then they were diving from their saddles, rolling into the shelter of the overhang. It wasn't much, a shallow cave carved by ancient waters, but it was defensive. Silas was already positioning himself, rifle ready. "How many rounds?" he asked. She checked. 12 for the pistol. You? 20, maybe 25. Not enough. Not nearly enough. The bounty hunters appeared at the canyon mouth. 5 of them. Rough men with harder lives etched on their faces. Tate was with them, no longer pretending to be a lawman. Just another killer looking for a payday. "Silas Boone," one of them called. "We got paper on you and the woman. Come out peaceful-like. We'll make it quick." "Counteroffer," Silas called back. "You ride away now. You get to keep breathing." Someone laughed. 6 against 2? I like our odds. Your funeral." The attack came fast and hard. The bounty hunters spread out, using cover, laying down steady fire. Silas answered with careful shots, making each one count. A man cried out, clutching his shoulder. Another ducked back, hat flying off, but they were losing ground, being pushed deeper into the overhang, running low on ammunition. Eloise fired when she had clear shots, trying not to think about how each pull of the trigger might end a life. Then Tate made his move, while his hired guns kept them pinned. He worked his way along the canyon wall, using a hidden path. Eloise saw him first, called a warning, but he was already too close. "Hello, Ellie," he said, pistol trained on her. "Time to end this." Silas spun, but Tate was ready. "Drop it, soldier, or I put one in her pretty head." The rifle clattered to the ground. Silas raised his hands slowly, eyes never leaving Tate's face. "Good boy." Tate's smile was ugly. "You know, I actually admired you once. The way you protected her, stood by her. Man like that, he's worth something, but you picked the wrong woman." "No," Silas said quietly. "I picked the right one. Sweet, stupid, but sweet." Tate cocked his pistol. "Here's what happens. You're going to die. She's going to watch. Then she's coming with me, and we're going to disappear. Start fresh somewhere. She'll learn to love me again, given time. You're insane, Eloise breathed. Am I? I gave up everything for you, my life, my name, 6 years of running and hiding and building a new identity. Also, I could come back for you. And this is how you repay me, taking up with some broken-down blacksmith. You killed 2 innocent men. You tried to frame me for it. Details. The mask finally slipped completely, showing the desperate madness underneath. We were supposed to be together. I did it all for us. You did it for yourself, Eloise said. You always did. Even back then, it was never about love. It was about owning me. Shut up! The gun swung toward her. Everything happened at once. Silas lunged forward, putting himself between Eloise and the bullet. The gun fired. Silas grunted, spinning with the impact, but his momentum carried him into Tate, both men crashing to the ground. They rolled in the dirt, fighting for the gun. Silas was stronger, but he was hurt, blood spreading across his shirt. Tate was desperate, fighting like a cornered animal. The gun went off again, muffled between their bodies. Both men went still. Silas! Eloise scrambled forward, terror clawing at her throat. Silas! Slowly, painfully, he rolled aside. Tate lay beneath him, eyes wide with surprise, a spreading stain on his chest. His mouth worked, trying to form words, but only blood came out. Should have... Tate wheezed. Should have been mine. And then he was gone, the false marshal finally meeting the death he'd earned. Silas! Eloise pressed her hands to his shoulder where the first bullet had taken him. Stay with me. I'm all right. But his face was gray. Just need a minute. The bounty hunters had stopped firing, without Tate to pay them, facing a cornered man with nothing to lose. Their enthusiasm waned. After a brief conference, Eloise heard horses leaving. Rats abandoning ship. Silas muttered, Don't talk. Save your strength. For what? So you can yell at me for getting shot again? Yes. Tears ran down her face. That's exactly what I'm saving you for. He smiled weakly, looking forward to it. They stayed there as the sun tracked across the sky, Eloise keeping pressure on the wound, Silas drifting in and out of consciousness. She talked to keep him anchored, about their future, the house they'd build, the children they'd have, the life waiting beyond this violence. Near sunset, new horses approached. Eloise grabbed Silas's rifle, ready to make their last stand, but it was Sheriff Morrison who appeared, along with 2 men wearing Texas Ranger badges, real ones. Behind them rode Reverend Thomas and half a dozen men from town. Easy there, Mrs. Boone, Morrison called. Cavalry's here. The next hours blurred together, the Rangers confirming Tate's identity, taking statements, men from town fashioning a travois for Silas, the long ride back with Eloise never leaving his side. Dr. Fitzgerald worked through the night, extracting the bullet, stitching the wound. He'll live, he finally pronounced, though he's going to have another impressive scar. He collects them, Eloise said, weak with relief. Later, in the quiet of the doctor's back room, Silas woke to find her curled in a chair beside his bed. Hey, he whispered. Her eyes flew open. Hey yourself, how do you feel? Like I got shot again. You did get shot again. But she was smiling through her tears. My hero. Just a blacksmith who got lucky. My lucky blacksmith, then. He caught her hand. Is it over? It's over. The Rangers have everything. Doris's testimony, the evidence about the badge, Tate's confession witnessed by half a dozen bounty hunters. They're clearing my name completely. Good, that's good. His eyes started to drift closed, then snapped open. Wait, does this mean we need to get married again since we're not on the run anymore? She laughed, the sound bright and free. Reverend Thomas says he'll perform the ceremony as soon as you can stand upright. Tomorrow, then. You can barely lift your head. I'll manage. Been waiting 2 years to marry you proper. Not waiting any longer. She leaned down, kissing him softly. I love you. Silas Boone. Love you too. Eloise Boone. Outside, Redemption Creek was waking up. The school bell rang, calling children to lessons. Hammers rang from the building sites. Life going on, the way it does, washing away violence with ordinary miracles. In a week, they'd stand before the whole town and make their vows official. In a month, Silas would be back at his forge. Eloise back in her classroom. The whispers would fade, replaced by new scandals, new stories. But right now, in this quiet room with morning light slanting through dusty windows, they had everything they needed, each other, alive and whole enough. The past buried with the man who'd tried to use it against them, and the future, stretching ahead like an open road, finally free of shadows. 1 year later, spring came early to Redemption Creek. The desert bloomed with unexpected color, purple sage, golden poppies, the fierce red of cactus flowers. Eloise stood on the rise overlooking town, one hand resting on her swollen belly, watching the changes below. The school had a second room now, built by volunteer hands when the number of students doubled. Parents who'd once whispered behind their hands now brought her preserves and baby clothes. Amazing what a little truth and time could do. "You shouldn't be walking so far," Silas said, coming up behind her. He moved easier these days, though the scars still pulled when the weather changed. "Dr. Fitzgerald said exercise is good for the baby. Dr. Fitzgerald hasn't seen you try to navigate these rocks in your condition." But his hands were gentle as they settled on her shoulders, pulling her back against his chest. They stood together, watching the sunset paint the valley gold. Below, smoke rose from their own chimney, the house Silas had built with his own hands on the edge of town, close enough to be part of the community, but far enough for privacy. "Reverend Thomas stopped by the forge today," Silas said. "Wanted to know if we'd chosen names yet." "What did you tell him?" "That we're still debating. Sarah, if it's a girl, after your first wife. I like that. And Marcus, if it's a boy, after your father." Eloise smiled, covering his hands with hers. "He would have liked you. Daddy always said I needed someone steady, someone who'd stand firm when I got too dreamy." "Steady. That's me, boring old Silas." She turned in his arms, looking up at him with mock severity. "You got shot twice defending me, married me in a sandstorm, and built me a house with your bare hands. Hardly boring. When you put it like that." They walked home slowly, Eloise setting the pace. The town was quiet, most folks settling in for evening meals. Through windows, they could see families gathering, normal life in all its ordinary glory. "Mrs. Henderson asked if I'd be returning to teach after the baby." Eloise said, "What did you tell her?" "That I'd try, maybe part-time at first. Mary Sullivan's old enough to help with the younger children now." "Proud of that girl. From barely reading to helping teach, that's something. That's what good teachers do. They create more teachers." At home, Eloise sank gratefully into her chair while Silas stoked the fire. The house still smelled of new wood and possibility. Books lined one wall, her collection finally having a proper home. His tools hung neat in their places. Everything ordered just so. "Letter came," Silas said, pulling an envelope from the mantel. "Austin postmark." Eloise's hands trembled slightly as she opened it. They'd been expecting this, the final legal documents clearing her name completely. But seeing it in official black and white still made her breath catch. "By order of the state of Texas," she read aloud. "All charges against Eloise Campbell, also known as Eloise Monroe, now Eloise Boone, are hereby dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, commendation is given for her assistance in bringing the criminal Tate Granger to justice." How's it feel, being officially innocent? Strange, like waking from a long nightmare. She folded the letter carefully. "I can use my real name now, be myself again." "You've always been yourself. Just took the rest of us a while to see it." A knock at the door interrupted them. Silas answered to find young Timothy Walker, out of breath from running. "Mr. Boone! Mrs. Boone! You need to come quick!" "What's wrong?" Eloise struggled to her feet, maternal instinct already strong. "Nothing wrong. Ma'am, something good. There's a man at the hotel. Says he came all the way from Missouri. Says he's looking for Silas Boone, who served with the 7th Cavalry." Silas went very still. "Did he give a name?" "Colonel something. walking with a cane, missing his left arm. Jameson. Silas breathed the name like a prayer. Colonel Robert Jameson. Within an hour. The reunion was in full swing at the hotel dining room. Colonel Jameson, gray-haired and worn but still carrying himself like a soldier, gripped Silas's hand with his remaining arm. "Damn good to see you, Sergeant. Been looking for you for years." "Colonel, I thought, after what happened is you saved my life." Jameson's voice carried now, meant for the gathered crowd. "This man disobeyed direct orders to attack a peaceful camp. When I tried to stop him, took an arrow meant for me, then carried me 20 miles to safety." "Sir," "I'm not finished. The discharge was my failure, not yours. I was too wounded to fight the decision, too weak to speak up. By the time I recovered, you'd vanished." He pulled out an official document. "Took me years to get this. Full honorable discharge, back pay, and commendation for valor." Silas stared at the papers, speechless. Eloise slipped her hand into his, feeling him tremble. "Furthermore," Jameson continued, "I've recommended you for a position training cavalry horses at Fort Grant. Good pay, good housing, chance to serve without the fighting. If you want it, Silas looked at Eloise. "We have a life here. Think about it. Offer stands." Jameson smiled. "Besides, wanted to meet the woman who finally caught you. Sarah always said it would take someone special. You knew Sarah? Met her once when she visited the fort. Lovely woman. She'd be happy you found love again." He turned to Eloise. "Take care of him. Mrs. Boone. Best man I ever served with." Later that night, they lay in bed, moonlight streaming through the windows. Eloise traced the scars on Silas's chest, thinking about all the stories written there. "Will you take it? The position? Do you want me to? I want you happy, but—" She hesitated. "We just found our place here, our home. Then we stay. Money's not worth uprooting you again. Not with the baby coming. Our roots are in each other, not any place." She shifted, trying to get comfortable. "But you're right. This is home now." The baby kicked, strong enough for Silas to feel it through her nightgown. His face lit up with wonder, the way it did every time. "Active tonight. Always is when you're near. I think he knows your voice. Or she. Or she." Eloise smiled. "Either way, this child will grow up knowing both parents, having a real name, a real life. No shadows, no secrets. Just love. Just love." Morning brought more visitors. Parents enrolling children for the new term. The banker's wife commissioning horseshoes. Normal problems. Normal life. Eloise watched from the porch as Silas worked, the ring of his hammer steady as a heartbeat. "Mrs. Boone?" It was Mary Sullivan, nearly grown now, clutching a package. "This came on the stage, from Texas." Inside was a daguerreotype and a letter. The image showed a plain woman with kind eyes. Doris Hutchins. The letter was in her careful script. "Heard you got your happy ending. Good. That Snake Granger ruined too many lives. Glad you and your man are well. The package has something else. Found it in Granger's things when they auctioned them. Thought you should have it." At the bottom of the package was a locket. Inside, a picture of a young woman who looked like Eloise, but softer somehow, unmarked by tragedy. "That's you," Silas said, looking over her shoulder. "Before. Young and foolish. Young and hopeful. There's a difference." He kissed her temple. "She's still in there. I see her when you laugh with the children." That evening, they walked to the cemetery on the hill. Sarah's grave was there, well tended, fresh flowers in a mason jar. Silas touched the headstone gently. "Brought someone to meet you," he said quietly. "Think you'd like her. She's got your kindness, but more spine. Keeps me in line." Eloise stood back, letting him have his moment. Then he took her hand, leading her to another corner where a new stone stood. Simple, just a name and dates. Tate Granger. Sheriff asked what to put. Silas explained. Seemed wrong to leave it blank. He wasn't all bad, Eloise said slowly. Just lost, confused love with possession. Still nearly killed us both. Yes. But hating him gives him power he doesn't deserve anymore. She touched her belly. I want our child to know forgiveness, not bitterness. They walked home as stars emerged overhead. The town was settling for the night, lamps glowing in windows, families gathering, stories being told. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. The baby would come soon. Decisions about the future would need making. But tonight, they had this: the walk home together, the house Silas built, the life they'd fought for and won, the knowledge that whatever came next, they'd face it side by side. At their door, Silas paused. No regrets? None. You? Just one. What? He grinned. That it took us 2 years to get here? She laughed, the sound carrying on the night air. Better late than never. Better together than apart. Always together. She agreed. Inside their home, they prepared for bed with the easy rhythm of a couple who'd found their way through fire to peace. Outside, the desert wind sang its ancient song, and life in Redemption Creek went on. Ordinary, precious, and free. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote called to its mate. The answer came swift and sure. 2 voices joining in the night. Eloise smiled, her hand finding Silas's across the space between them. I love you, she whispered. Love you too. He answered. My redemption. And in the quiet house on the edge of town, with new life growing between them and old ghosts finally laid to rest, they slept. 2 souls who'd found their way home to each other, writing their own story of love in the unforgiving beauty of the West. Thank you so much for joining us around the Wild West Campfire for this tale of love, redemption, and courage in the Old West. I'm curious. Where are you listening to this story from? Drop a comment below and let's connect across the miles, just like the old telegraph lines that connected frontier towns. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Campfire for more authentic tales of romance and adventure from America's frontier days. Share your thoughts about Eloise and Silas's journey. Did their love story touch your heart? Until next time, partners, keep riding toward your own sunset.